Okay, so last time we were in class, we were talking about the different types of evidence, and you started that on your chart, so you need to add the following. We talked about transient, that it's temporary, it's easily changed or lost, so have a cup of coffee that's near the victim. Was it hot or cold? If you have a drink with ice in it, is the ice melted? Is there the smell of smoke? Was there a candle lit? Usually this stuff does not last for very long. Pattern evidence is left when a person or an object comes into contact with something else. So like fingerprints, shoe prints, tire marks, anything that leaves a pattern. Conditional evidence is produced by a specific event or action. So it is basically, it helps to determine the circumstances or the sequence within a crime scene. So conditional evidence, was the window open? Was the person hit and then walked around the room? Transfer evidence is produced by either a person and an object or between persons and other persons. So transfer evidence is you actually leaving part of hair, fiber, whatever onto other objects. And then associative evidence is things that can belong to either the victim or to a suspect, like their personal belongings. So here are some more specific examples. Transient evidence, one of the examples are those are odors. So like odor of decaying body, perfume, gas, urine, cigarette smoke. Also another thing is temperature. So like if the car hood is warm, if coffee is warm, if somebody has started a bath, even if the person is dead, with the temperature of the body. For imprints and indentations, footprints, teeth marks, things that might disappear over time. So those are things that are considered to be transient. Pattern evidence are mostly kind of like imprints, striations, markings. So like blood spatter can leave a pattern. Glass that's been broken can, burning, like where furniture is, tire marks, gunpowder residue. So anything that leaves a pattern behind is considered pattern evidence. Conditional evidence, so this is like the conditions that were found in the room. So lights, were the lights on or off? Were the headlights on in the vehicle? Smoke, what color was it? What direction was it going? What was the density? What was the odor? So if there's a fire, the color, the direction of the flames. Location, either of injuries or wounds or blood stains. The vehicle, any of the cartridges or the actual shells. Vehicles, so the door locked or unlocked. Body, where is the position of the body? Where are the wounds? And kind of the scene, like the furniture, the doors, was there a sign of struggle? So the condition of the environment in which the crime actually occurred. So you can also classify evidence by nature. So is it biological? So biological evidence comes from anything that's living. So like that's blood, semen, saliva, sweat, tears, hair, bone, tissue, and so on. It can also be not human. It can be animal material, insects, bacteria, fungus, anything that is alive. Chemical evidence has to do with things that are from non-living sources, like fibers, glass, soil, gunpowder, any types of metals or minerals, any type of substances like narcotics, drugs. If you're looking at documents, it can be paper, ink, it can be cosmetics, paint, plastic, lubricants, or fertilizer. Physical evidence by nature is things like fingerprints, footprints, shoe prints, handwriting, firearms, an awful lot like pattern evidence. And then miscellaneous, so like voice analysis, polygraph, photography, stress evaluation, psycholinguistic analysis, vehicle identification. So if you are required to know some of the different types, I will give you some of the more common examples instead of some of the ones that are a little bit more complicated to remember. We also talked about before that there are another way to separate out evidence is based on whether or not it's individual or class. Class evidence takes a large group of individuals that might be suspects, and this class evidence actually narrows the field. So like class evidence would be if you have a piece of material and anybody who has that type of a sweatshirt would now be considered to be a suspect. If you're talking about having hair samples and the hair samples are for somebody who's brunette, it doesn't tell me who it was, it just tells me that the scope of people I'm looking for has a specific type of hair color. Same thing for blood typing. If I know I'm looking for suspect who has type O blood, it narrows the field, but it doesn't tell me who the person is. Individual evidence, though, does link it to a specific person. So fingerprints can individualize evidence. DNA definitely can. Any type of blood or any type of nuclear DNA or even mitochondrial DNA especially the nuclear, is like 99.7% accurate. Some other examples, individual evidence can occur when you're talking about striations on bullets. So for example, two people might have the same gun, but the markings or the striations caused by the barrel of the gun on the bullet will be different depending on the use of the gun, how often it's cleaned, what type of bullets they use, etc. So you can link certain things to an individual. And that's one of the things that they look for in forensic science, is not only narrowing the field of suspects down, but then looking for individual evidence that will allow them to pinpoint a specific person. That's not always possible. There's not always DNA evidence. A lot of times it is a combination of class evidence, and that class evidence, we hear that referred to as circumstantial evidence, will point towards a person, but it doesn't specifically tell you that that person committed the crime. So here are some examples. You see fibers there, and the fibers look like they could match the material that's sitting there, but it's considered to be class evidence because there's no way to determine that it came from that actual garment. This broken glass could be considered individual evidence. So anything that's broken into pieces and can be put back together is considered individual evidence. If a person had duct tape that held their wrists together or across the mouth, and you're able to take that piece and you find the duct tape roll and you're able to match the two pieces, that becomes individual. So when something is in smaller pieces or fits back together, that then makes it individual. So we talked about in class, if there was a piece of gray material from a sweatshirt left at a crime scene, it would narrow the group of suspects to those of us who had gray sweatshirts. If I found the sweatshirt that the piece was missing from and it fit back exactly, then it becomes individual evidence. So which of these do you think could be individual evidence? So you have matches, you have, whoops, I was trying to zoom in on that, you have a broken bottle, you have a shoe print, and you have casings and bullets in here. So if you're looking at the matches, that's going to be class evidence unless I actually have the match in front of me that fits exactly, and that's going to be really hard to tell on a match to see if the break is exact match to it or not. I'm assuming if that second picture is a broken bottle, that would become individual evidence because you can put the pieces back together. The shoe print is going to be class evidence. It can at least tell you what type of shoe it is. Depending on the person's shoes, if there's specific wear marks, then they might be able to narrow it down to be more individual. And then with bullets and casings, that's definitely individual evidence because each gun is going to leave different markings or striations. So we're going to stop there as far as investigations go. You are going to go ahead and do the types of evidence worksheet. Okay, so at the beginning of the hour, you should have finished the Innocence Project that went with the eyewitness accounts gone wrong. And then this is the next assignment, and you should have already started on that chart because we started on that with the notes. So when you open this up, it's going to ask you some of the differences between physical evidence, or excuse me, physical versus testimonial. How accurate is it? Here's the chart that we started that has the 5 different types of evidence in it. And then you're going to talk about the difference between class and individual evidence. You're then going to start to work on your case study. So your job with the case study is to research a case research and analyze a case that interests you. You're going to analyze the mistakes that were made during the investigation and the trial. So probably the best example of what I want is by looking at the grading rubric. So if you look at this, you need to provide background information, the individual's background, and that describes anything unusual before the crime occurred, and a description of the crime itself. You need a timeline, so from the first incident to the final conviction of what happened. The evidence collected, so you need to tell about the evidence that was collected and the test results that they got from that evidence. You need to list all the mistakes made in either evidence collection and the trial, and also if it's an older one, list some newer techniques that could be used today to help maybe individualize the crimes. And then it needs to be visually appealing, so you can use Google Slides, you can use iMovie, you can use Prezi. It's up to you, but it has to have 5 to 7 pictures that show the defendant and the evidence, and you also have to list 3 of your resources. So what I've done on the actual assignment page where I got that worksheet is that there are sign-up sheets for each class. So pick your partner or the 2 or 3 people you're going to work with, list your names in the case, because I really don't want, there's enough different cases out there that I don't want 2 people doing, or 2 groups doing the same case. So find something that interests you. O.J. Simpson is out, but I've had some really interesting cases reported on before that I've never heard of. So do some research. Find one that really sounds fascinating and research that. And then it is due, I think, like the end of next week, middle to end of next week, and you all will be presenting the cases to us and talking about the mistakes that were made, the evidence that was collected. So we are going to start next week on to how to collect the evidence, and then we'll do those presentations. So you need to make sure that you took your notes, you finished the homework assignment from Wednesday, that you go through and you fill out the worksheet, and once you fill out the worksheet that you decide, you start researching cases and decide which one you want to do and start collecting all of the material that you need to present in class.